To look at many of our urban centers today is to look at how badly we've neglected the importance of urban planning. In Season 8 of Dayaw, we visit the old urban centers of Luzon to see how our ancestors maintained a sense of order. One that created spaces for communities, their economic and cultural activities, their daily lives. Indeed, the entire fabric of a solid, united community. This is Season 8 of Dayaw. Halina't dumayo. Doon po sa amin. In Season 8 of Dayaw, we take a short breather from our documentation of the indigenous peoples of the Philippines. Instead, we visit the old towns in Manila and the rest of Luzon to see how Spanish colonizers planned the urban centers of a new, economically viable colony. Urban planning is neither a modern issue nor science. Our oldest cities were built following a specific plan, one that was enforced in all the colonies of Spain from the Pacific to the Americas. This template was known as the Law of the Indies.
The Law of the Indies was a framework for relations with the locals as well as a basis for the physical development of towns and cities, which is based on a grid focused on a central open space, which is the plaza. The adjustments to these laws happened over several centuries, from the 16th to the 17th century. The adjustments made were specific only to the topography of the sites. A lot of the towns and cities in the Americas were in the tropical region, so it's very similar to the Philippines, although we had more islands. So the pattern used in American towns in Mexico, in Peru, in Venezuela are very similar to the patterns used in the Philippines. All of the major towns and cities in the Philippines use the pattern of the grid or the quadricula and the open spaces, which are the plazas. So any town that has a plaza and the grid of streets in a checkerboard pattern is from the Spanish colonial era. And a lot of our towns and cities still have the central plaza and the open space plus the grid system of streets. The prime examples are, of course, Intramuros in Manila and Vigan in the north.
As an instrument of colonization and as a way of visually aligning new colonies into a homogeneous Hispanic identity, the Law of the Indies says much about the strategies of Spain in imposing its ordered view of the world upon its colonies. In Old Manila, we see how the colonizers shaped our own native culture and how our forefathers adapted to and survived the culture of the colonizers. For many of us, Intramuros evokes feelings of warm nostalgia. We see it as a symbol of an elegant Hispanic past. But Intramuros was, first and foremost, a manifestation of a colonial power. Economics, imperial policies, religion, and even segregation and ghettoism were reflected in the layout of this urban center that was a foremost bastion of Spanish colonial power in the Far East. Paulo Alcazaren ticks off the most vital areas in what the Spanish monarchs called the noble and ever loyal city.
Manila was developed along the banks of the Pasig River and facing the sea, which is Manila Bay. The original palisades of the Datus were taken over by the Spanish, and a grid of streets were laid out. So Intramuros is five-sided area of about approximately 60 hectares. The smaller size defined a moat. So essentially, Intramuros was an island connected to the rest of the surrounding area by bridges across the moats. So this is the pattern for Manila, within which a grid of streets, blocks and streets defined the city inside, with two plazas or three plazas: the Plaza Mayor, which is the civic plaza, the Plaza Militar inside Fort Santiago, and a minor plaza towards the what is now the Parian. Of course, the major area to visit is Intramuros as a whole, which is defined by its walls and the grid of streets and open spaces inside. So the wall itself, you can walk around that. The central open space, or the center of the city, is Plaza Roma. Which is defined by the Ayuntamiento. The Palacio del Gobernador, and the Manila Cathedral. Fort Santiago, which is the fort that guarded the walled city. Any of the minor plazas in and around Intramuros itself. The Padre Burgos, if you walk all around Intramuros, you will see how it still is isolated from the rest of the city. Any of the bridges across, well, specifically the Jones Bridge, which replaced the Spanish-era Puente España as a connection from Intramuros to Binondo, which was where the customs house and most of the business was carried out along the two muelles of our banks of the Pasig River.
Manila Bay and the Pasig River were vital to the growth of the city. Strangely, as you will hear, the port area was an innovation of the American colonizers and not the Spanish.
Most of the ships would dock in Manila Bay, and the goods were loaded into lighters or cascos and brought to the two muelles, where they were offloaded into the warehouses in Binondo or elsewhere, which would be the Chinatown today. Again, the places of interest would be the plazas, Plaza Santa Cruz, Plaza Binondo, or which is now Lorenzo Ruiz, originally Calderon de la Barca. Plaza Goiti was originally the center of Manila until the early 1960s, because Plaza Goiti was the point at which you referred yourself when you went to the center of business and commerce in Manila.
If Intramuros was a bastion of imperial power, then the arrabales, or suburbs, were the reflections of a more gentrified way of life.
The 5 arrabales around Manila, which includes Binondo, Santa Cruz, Quiapo, Arroceros, Ermita, and Malate. These were where the summer houses were, or where Hermitage, like for Ermita, was set up. Eventually, this was filled up with structures and houses.
After the Spanish, it was the American colonizers who further shaped the city beyond the boundaries of the stone walls of Intramuros.
When the Americans came in '98 and the ensuing war between the Filipinos and the Americans progressed into the 20th century, Manila was great, and its surrounding towns and cities were greatly affected. So the American authorities thought it best to replan the whole city, and they brought in Daniel Burnham in late 1904. He created a master plan for Manila in 1905, which had a connection to the port city of Sangli, because Sangli was where the American Navy was based. The American Army was based in Fort Santiago. The model for Burnham's Manila is actually Washington, D.C. The open space that Burnham found in the Luneta Park was turned by him into a civic center. So the civic center was to house all of the structures of government, just like Washington, D.C., with the Capitol, the National Mall, and the offices of government. The same pattern was used by Burnham in his plan for Manila, with the old Luneta turned into a civic space, and modern Manila expanding in about 5 sections all around that center. He conserved Intramuros as part of the heritage, and each of the 5 quadrants, 5 sections of the city was to be developed in a density that extended the original grid of Intramuros into a more modern grid, which is in the pattern of the City Beautiful.
We now see Manila as a city that grew under specific visions of the Spanish and American colonizers. The city is not just a physical space, but a map of imperial visions, all without a doubt well-meaning and progressive, for their time at least.
Now, Burnham had projected the city would grow to 800,000 people, and that was the carrying capacity already set over 100 years ago. The streets and the street system that you see today are remnants of what originally was intended. It was never fully built out, and this street system for vehicular traffic was supported by a tranvia system that was expanded under the Americans. It was started in the Spanish period, in the late Spanish period, a franchise originally given to the Zobels, but taken over in the American period by a New York-based company. And the Manila Electric Rail and Light Company took over the tranvia system, which expanded all the way north to Navotas, all the way east to Pasig, all the way south to Caloocan, in a rail-based tram system that at its peak carried 7 million passengers a year. So Manila was a very walkable and accessible city because of this network, and the expansion of the city was based on this wonderful street and tram system. Unfortunately, not all of the street system was built. They were not able to consolidate enough land and divide it rationally. The tram system eventually gave way to jeepneys and informal systems of transport. And so what happened after about 4 decades was the Philippine government, already under the Commonwealth, decided to move the city in anticipation of the Declaration of Independence to Quezon City. So the Burnham Plan was never fully fleshed out. A lot of the network of streets were never fully built. The tram system on which it relied disappeared after the war, and it's only in the 1970s that the light rail system was reintroduced. And this system comes after the fact that Manila had already grown out into Greater Manila and now Metro Manila. And so what is happening is that these master plans, which were never fully built out, can never be brought back. And the master plans that were prepared in the late 30s, 40s, and 50s, about 6 major master plans, at each point were never fully fulfilled. So we are constantly trying to catch up with an ever-expanding city, and unfortunately we're never successful.
Now more than ever, the experiences and lessons of the past may yet yield important clues for the future. Surely our city planners must take all these into consideration as they formulate new ways of furthering Dayaw, our knowledge, our pride.